Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our Analytical Science webinar with Dr. Phil Riby. Before I hand over to Phil, I'd just like to take a minute to introduce myself. Some of you may have spoken to me already, but for those that haven't, my name is Craig Donaldson, and I am the course advisor. So my role generally is to speak to most of you guys with questions you have around the application process, which might include questions around the course fees, entry requirements, and even questions if you're suitable for the course, which hopefully I can answer. But if I can't, I'll always turn to Phil for some guidance. So you'll also notice as well that Phil and I are working remotely or from two different screens, which gives you an idea that we are working remotely. And this is just following government guidance that the University of Manchester has closed down its non-essential buildings. So Phil and I are working from our homes today. And as you can see, it's quite a nice day as well. So my role today, as I said, I'm going to hand over to Phil in just a moment, who will run through a set of slides. And as you can see, it'll be an overview of the course and what you can expect to learn. Now, my role today is you'll also notice that you've got a feature to send through some questions. And Phil and I do encourage you to do that. I'll keep an eye on them. And when we get to the end of the session, I'll pitch the questions to Phil, and hopefully we'll give you the information that you need. Okay. Now, enough for me. I'll hand over to Phil. Over to you, Phil.
So, okay, thanks, Craig. Pretty much okay. I hope everybody is dealing with this current slightly strange situations that we're all having to deal with. As I said, you can see my bookcase in the back, and you can see out of Craig's window. So the immediate thing is you can tell that we're also dealing with it. So hopefully you're in a safe position, and everybody's managing to cope with the current situation. Pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to have a chat around the actual MSc Analytical Science, the distance learning mode, and literally how it works. Okay, we were just saying that our students basically are currently on the course of getting used to dealing with the kind of online access facilities. I'll talk about some of those in a minute, and you'll see basically how they work. And pretty much, okay, the students have got very used to this, and basically coming online, we have online capability basically, so everybody can talk to each other. And I came in basically on time. We had a tutorial last week, and pretty much I came on time, and most of the students had actually joined 10 minutes early so that they can all have a conversation about the assignment that we're dealing with. So we'll have a look at that. So as Craig said, my name's Phil Riby, I'm the course director. So you'll see on the front there that we've actually put on when the deadline for applications for the next session is. Okay, and that's just really to remind you. We'll have it again at the end so that you can see it.
Sure.
Okay, do you want to pop up the next one then, Craig, and I'll basically do that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Phil.
There we go. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, there's a very terrible picture of me. Okay, get used to seeing me because you actually see me. I run the fundamentals unit, which is the first unit that you do. So you'll get used to seeing me. Okay, so pretty much. Just to give you a kind of history, and we'll do this with everybody at the beginning so that you can actually talk to everybody and see what everybody does. Okay, and everybody comes from relatively diverse backgrounds. So I'm currently reader in analytical chemistry at the University of Manchester. My actual specialist area is atomic spectroscopy, although I do a fair bit of chromatography as well. So just to give you some idea of basically how that came about. So I came to Manchester from the School of Pharmacy at Liverpool John Moores University. So I'm used to dealing with fairly diverse ranges of students. I've taught lots and lots of people from different backgrounds, basically analytical chemistry over a number of years. So, and before that, okay, I was actually at the University of Greenwich. And then even before that, I did a postdoc. I was actually working as a postdoc at the United States Department of Agriculture. So I was working basically out of the country, and pretty much I used to develop novel plasma devices basically for analyzing food samples, okay, that used to come in for nutritional assessment at USDA. And then before that, I actually did a PhD with Steve Haswell, who's now at the University of Hull. And pretty much Steve and I worked on arsenic determination in nickel alloys, which sounds kind of very diverse, but it's actually related to turbine blades in jet engines. So if you get onto an aircraft these days, okay, it will have a jet engine on it, or when we're allowed to get back onto jet aircraft, it will have a jet engine on it. And pretty much, okay, they're actually weakened, their structure is weakened, or the turbine blades are weakened if they have more than a certain amount of arsenic in them. So what we were doing was working on methodologies basically to accurately assess the amount of arsenic in turbine blade materials to make sure that those turbine blades were safe when they were brought up to speed. So that's what we were doing.
Fantastic, that, Phil.
Okay then, Craig, if you want to take us across, let's have a look. Okay, so let's have a chat about the actual course. So we've got a large number of individuals who teach on the course, not just me. So pretty much, and most of the guys that you're going to be dealing with are experts in their areas. So we're in the privileged position of basically being able to talk to a number of people who use techniques every day, and basically and use it basically at the edge of some of the research that's actually done within Manchester. So we're trying to develop transferable skills, okay, that are essential for careers in analytical science. And you probably know yourselves, if you talk to anybody within industry these days, often what happens is people are asking for problem-solving capability, which is quite an interesting term. Okay, if you actually ask somebody to tell you what that means, it can be a little bit interesting. But the idea is that basically to look at problems, okay, and come up with solutions, okay, and pretty much analysts in general do a wide range of this type of work. We're often asked basically to help out within industrial companies when problems occur. Can you give us a bit more data on this? Could you suggest a way that we could do this? So we're generally very active in this area. So pretty much, and we are involved in all kinds of different industries. So I made a list, basically, it's not in any particular order, okay, but you can see there environmental, clinical, pharmaceutical, chemical, food production, petrochemical, materials, lots and lots of different areas. The way to think about us really is if something has to be tested before a product is released to the community for testing its efficacy, so in other words, does it work properly, or is it safe, then generally speaking, there will be an analyst somewhere in that chain, okay, in a laboratory basically, or outside the laboratory, getting tests done in order to make sure that the products are okay to go out to the public. And that's pretty much what we do. So it involves a practical approach. And you might say to yourself, well, okay, this is online, so that sounds a bit strange. How do you do that? And you go, well, what we do is basically we look at what happens when you get to look at real data. So we'll handle data that's basically been gained in the laboratory. And as you probably know yourselves, that data sometimes is perfect, which is great, and sometimes it's not as perfect. And we have to come up with the reasons why it might not be perfect, and fundamentally what we can actually do to improve it. And that's basically what we're going to attempt to do here. So we will have, as well as handling real data, you'll see us basically, or see people basically involved in video practicals, so you can actually see, if you've not come across the equipment before, what it physically looks like, and then pretty much how do you actually go about using it, and then looking at the data that that generates, you know, how would you go about assessing whether it's okay or not, and if it's not okay, what would you actually do to improve it. We also have, as part of the scheme, a hands-on project, okay, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
Okay then, Craig, let's have a look. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how the course is actually set up, we have 4 mandatory units where you will deal with some of the techniques that are going to be necessary basically to be involved in analytical. Now, as you can see, they're the first unit up. They are in the order in which we run them. So pretty much Fundamentals of Analytical Science is my unit. And pretty much what we do is we look at all those things that are necessary to think about before you actually start approaching the actual techniques themselves. So we will look at some techniques to give you some idea. So things like basic techniques, titrometric, gravimetric techniques. We'll look at things like analytical figures of merit. Okay, what's important to assess in an analytical technique? So the limit of detection, limit of quantification, linearity, things to do with regulatory requirements. So things like ICH2QB, ISO 17025, those kind of considerations. When you're looking to see whether an analytical technique is giving you the right answer or not giving you the right answer. So, and we'll do that in the fundamentals unit. Everybody does the fundamentals unit. So you'll, as I said, you'll see me, you probably get fed up of seeing me. Okay, but I will be there. Okay. We'll then look at separation science, which deals with chromatography, how to break up a sample into its individual chemical components. And that's done by one of my colleagues, Nick Lockyer. And pretty much he'll be dealing with GC, HPLC. And we do that before we do the mass spectrometry unit, and that's Purdy Barron, who basically will be doing that. And Purdy will be basically looking at mass spectrometry, the actual assessment of the mass of a particular material, and what you need to do in order to effectively make that technique as effective as possible. So in other words, when you've got complex samples, then pretty much what you do there is break the complex samples up into individual chemical components and then use the mass spectrometer to assess them. Purdy does that and basically is involved in things like disease diagnostics, particularly with Parkinson's disease. And what they do there is, it's a very unusual area in that effectively they smell the patient, okay, and look at the mass spectrum of the materials that are actually there. And in certain cases, okay, Parkinson's disease patients can be diagnosed by particular chemical compounds that come out in their sweat.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting area. And particularly at the moment, I think pretty much the guys in the mass spec area are basically currently looking at whether there's any potential for them to diagnose things like COVID, okay, and see if that's applicable. I then come back with Andrew Horn, and Andrew and I basically will do atomic and molecular spectroscopy together. Obviously, I'm the atomic spectroscopist, Andrew's the molecular spectroscopist. So I will look at things like toxic metals and how you might go about assessing them and whether they're a problem or not. Andrew will then come on and do infrared, Raman, and some of the molecular techniques. You then basically have optional units, which we're currently running, and we're constantly looking at ways of basically adding to this list, but at the moment we're looking at magnetic resonance, so NMR techniques, okay, and that will be done by Matthias Nielsen and Eric McGuinness. X-ray techniques, that unit's been run by Mike Baker. The radiochemical and environmental methods tech unit, which effectively is I have some input into, but I'm fairly marginal on there. It's effectively been run by our colleagues in Earth Sciences and a gentleman called Dave Pollier. And then we have Drupad Trivedi, who's doing our chemometrics unit. So in that, it's using data from analytical techniques to look at pretty much how you can statistically analyze the data to improve it. So experimental design, how do you get a technique to the optimum condition? How basically do you tell data apart? These kind of things, okay, very, very important kind of area, okay, and pretty much I know that's in demand from a number of different industrial companies. Okay, all right, Craig, if you want to switch us over. Top, okay. So we're producing graduates with, you know, the right levels of technical skills basically to be involved in analytical, but we're also trying to produce graduates who are multifaceted. So pretty much if you have a problem come up and your area might be like mine, atomic spectroscopy, but you know that NMR, for instance, can be applied to solve particular problems. So you know that you need to go and find an NMR spectroscopist. That's the kind of thing we're looking at. Okay, so it's problem solving is at the heart of basically what we do. Okay, Craig, that's great. So just to show you the structure of the program, it's broken down into 20 credit units, okay, for the taught material. So you'll see we've got 4 mandatory units which you have to do, okay, and then from the remaining 4 you can choose 2 of the 20 credit optional units. And as I said, we're looking at different optional units as we go along. We're at the moment in the process of developing a food related one, and we are constantly looking basically for additional units that we can use. Okay, so pretty much if you think that there's a unit that's worth developing, let us know. Okay, we're always interested. There's also a 60 credit research based project. Okay, I'll come into how long it actually takes to do the course in a second, but minimally it's 24 months. So you can complete the course in 2 years, but that's a kind of minimum situation. So the immediate thing is we have a bit of flexibility in that system, and we can accommodate changes. You might have a role change at work or something of that nature. We can accommodate that.
Sure.
Okay then, Craig, great.
No problem, Phil.
Okay, so to give you an idea of what's actually involved, okay, what we're going to do here is look at a typical kind of 10-week, okay, unit, and fundamentally it's about 15 hours a week, okay, that people do roughly. All I'm going to do here is give you some typical things. Okay, it depends on the material that you're doing, and it also depends on the particular technique that you're dealing with in that unit. So it'll flex a little bit because effectively different techniques require different types of work input. So if you have a look, okay, we'll be doing some material, presenting some learning to you through learning objectives. Okay, so what you may get is typically, okay, you get video lectures. So pretty much we will be, so for instance, fundamentals, you will physically see me actually, or hear me lecturing, pretty much. And we'll have video lectures, and we may well have video practicals associated with them. Approximately 4 hours of exercises, so that's things like quizzes, some reading, some videos to watch, okay, that kind of thing, to kind of give you a chance to get up to speed on the particular area. We also have online discussions, and you probably heard me saying earlier, basically current students, normally what we do is try and encourage students to get involved in discussions. One, to get an idea about the actual material that's there, okay, and get a chance to have a chat with each other about what that material is, but also to meet the other students who are actually on the course and give yourself an opportunity to have a chat with each other. Okay, as I said, the people that we got currently running through my unit, they were all chatting with each other. Okay, last week when we had a tutorial. Okay, so it's a chance to actually meet each other and basically then additionally meet with us. Okay, and there are various different ways that you can do that. If you need to have a chat with us, we're online. Okay, we have discussion groups, we have online tutorials. Okay, if you don't want to do it that way, you can email me. Okay, lots of different ways of actually getting hold of the tutors, basically just to encourage the learning process, and that's pretty much what we're after. So as I said, online tutorials, okay, which is a video conference based system. Okay, we run it out of Blackboard, and it uses Blackboard Collaborate. Okay, but the immediate response is you'll see how to use it. It's not that difficult. Okay, and pretty much you can join it directly from Blackboard, which is the system that we actually use. Okay, then get private study, revision, coursework, independent study, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, flick us over, Craig, and we'll have a look. So as we've already said, the core units are 20 credits, which is approximately 200 hours of study. The research-based project is a 60 credit unit, so pretty much that's about 600 hours. For each of the taught units, it's 10 weeks in total. Okay, we do approximately 8 weeks of taught material, with some weeks where you can effectively work on the assessments. So there'll be material there allowing you to help with the assessments. So that's good. Okay, flip us over, Craig. Up on there. So just to give you some idea what the assessment actually involves, because that's what frightens most people. Okay, they get very concerned about the assessment. So the immediate thing is pretty much, okay, all assessments basically are undertaken as coursework. And pretty much, okay, you'll get things like contributions to discussion boards. You might have short presentations or problem-solving based reports. And the assessment will be tailored to the activities associated with each unit. So depending on the unit that you've done, okay, that's pretty much what we've been doing. So pretty much it's 100% coursework, it's 100% online submission. There are no written exams. We don't do written exams basically on this course. There are some online tests, okay, so there are tests that take place. They don't take place in every single unit. Okay, but some of them, so you may come across that. And it's based on a combination of essays, reports, blogs, wikis. You might be asked to give a presentation, that kind of thing. And there are typically two assessments for each unit, but we may also do similar type work that's not assessed to give you a chance to practice, okay, and get some feedback on how to do it.
Great, thanks, Phil.
Okay, yeah. The project is the one that does cause a lot of questions, and that's fine. Okay, as I said, pretty much projects being what they are, they tend to be on a case-by-case basis. So I do get a lot of people coming to me and asking me questions about the project. So you'll carry out a research project in one of the analytical areas, which basically will be based at your work location. If you're not currently in a work location or you don't have the ability to get access to the equipment, then the other alternative is effectively to go through the University of Manchester, which can be done. I just want to basically point out though that if you are coming, okay, the cost of effectively coming will be down basically to the student. So we need to look at each individual case. So if you have issues with the project, then the best way to deal with it is to contact me, okay, and we can have a chat about what the potential alternatives are. Okay, those based in an industrial environment will carry out the project with a joint supervision team. So what we're actually going to do is basically have an industrial supervisor, probably your line manager, okay, and one of the academics who's basically an expert in the area that you want to look at, okay, and we'll try and put something together basically for you. Those not based in current analytical environment can opt to attend, as I said, so we can have a chat about that. But often what we get are problems that potentially industrial companies might have, are looking for a solution, and they can work with you and with the academic supervisor at the University of Manchester to produce a solution to the issue that they've currently got. As I said, my email address is on there. Okay, you'll obviously get Craig's as well. Okay, so the immediate thing is pretty much if you've got a question, you can always drop us a line. Okay, we're quite easy to talk to. Okay, drop us a line and let us know what you think the issues are, and we can have a chat. So the typical students that we get, so to give you some idea for the ones that we've got at the moment, they come from all kinds of different backgrounds. Okay, some are based in chemistry, some are in analytical sciences generally, pharmaceutical, food production, clinical industry. Some are QA support for production facilities. Okay, pretty much, okay, we come from all kinds of areas. Okay, so the immediate thing is don't worry too much, okay? We probably dealt with students previously. I personally have a lot of experience basically of dealing with distance learning students. I used to be involved in the Royal Society of Chemistry's Analytical Chemistry by Open Learning course, ACOL, and all students on that were industrially based. So the immediate thing is pretty much if you have any issues, you're more than welcome to contact me, okay, and have a chat about it. Okay then, Craig?
Yep.
Okay, so what's different? If you've not been involved in distance learning before, probably worth just having a quick chat through. Okay, our taught units are delivered online. This is potentially different from most analytical science or analytical chemistry courses. Okay, it means you can work while you study. Okay, which is obviously advantageous to you and potentially very advantageous to your employer. Okay, and you fit the study in around your own time and around your own commitments. Okay, so pretty much, okay, we're quite happy that that can be dealt with. You can apply your learning and your practical skills in your research related project. Okay, and that can be done effectively to benefit your work environment. Okay, so you will be able to apply the knowledge, okay, that's there, okay, in order to do that. So it's great. As I said, we've had people basically doing distance learning before. Pretty much, it seems to suit, most people who are work-based. And as I said, rather than giving you a day off a week to do day release, okay, it also benefits your company to do this. So although they may have to give you some time actually away from your normal duties, you're normally at work, okay, so you're available if they desperately need to talk to you.
Okay, Phil.
Okay, so we have 2 intakes a year, a September intake and a February intake. So at the moment, we'll be going to the September intake. The fee for the total MSc is basically 18,000, but we break it down, so various different routes through that, okay, and it can be paid in various different amounts, okay. If we look at the entry qualifications, which is another thing people worry about, and again, that's fine, okay, no problems. If you need to talk to me, then do so, okay. All right, so normally we're looking for an upper second or equivalent in chemistry, okay, or MChem or BSc, okay, but we will also take candidates basically with a lower second, okay, who may have some relevant experience, okay, or other degree qualifications, okay, with significant analytical science. Because of the nature of analytical, we end up in lots and lots of different degree titles. So if you're worried about that, okay, again, worth contacting me and basically just asking me to have a look at what you've got in terms of your actual background. Okay, with the non-chemistry based courses, it just might be worth considering that you will not get effectively the accreditation from the Royal Society of Chemistry. Okay, that's because they have very specific demands on what potential entry requirements we need. Okay, so in other words, it's not a question of basically not doing the course. Okay, you can do the course, you just may not end up with accreditation from the Royal Society of Chemistry. That's all. You can see the IELTS scores there. Okay, and pretty much okay the TOEFL scores. Okay, that are required. Okay, and as I said, pretty much, okay, applications basically for September closing on the 21st of August. But the immediate thing is pretty much we're very available bunch. If you want to talk to us, got any questions, okay, then absolutely no problems whatsoever, just contact us.
Great, Phil. Hey.
Okay, so pretty much, I don't know if Craig wants to put his own voice on top of this. Okay, but that's Craig. Okay, so you can see Craig.
Seems a long time ago since Craig. Back here, Phil. Seems like it was almost years ago since that picture was taken and we were back on campus. But yeah, there's my details, everybody. So please do, as Phil said, send any questions to me. As I mentioned earlier, most of the time I answer questions on the application stage, but if you've got more technical, send them through to me. If you can't get through to Phil, and I'll always pitch them to him. Is that the last slide, Phil, of the presentation?
Yeah, I think you're the last person on there.
And the last one on there, and that's quite good timing, Phil, because I've got a bunch of questions that have come through for me to. It fits nicely with
okay,
this.
so just if you're listening to this, okay. So normally what would happen is Craig and I kind of field questions between us. So it kind of depends on the question.
Yeah.
We'll have a look at the questions, and then anything Craig can do, he'll do, and anything that needs to be punted over to me, okay, sent over to me to be looked at, I'll do
Yeah.
it.
We'll be a double act, Phil. We'll start now. I think the majority that's come through here, Phil, are probably going to be aimed at you, but when I'm needed, okay. I'll step in. So let me see our first one. I know that Hamoud asked one, but I think you've already answered that, Phil. It was around not having access to a lab. You touched on that anyway, so I'll move on to the next one, which was...
I was going to say the easiest thing with that is if you're in that position but you want to do the course, then just drop me an email and basically we can try and sort something out, okay, in terms of the potential issues of the project.
That's great, Phil. The next question we had was from Evan. Evan is actually based in the US, and he's referring to the tutorials that you mentioned, Phil. I think Evan's referring to time difference and how would we deal with that?
Okay, so the immediate thing is pretty much what we always do is we look at the individual group that we've got, okay, and we see basically how we can schedule those, okay. You're right in that at the moment, okay, we've only got European people actually on the course, so it's slightly easier to deal with. Having said that, okay, I guess it will depend basically whereabouts in the States you are. if you're East Coast or West Coast, okay. But normally what we will do is we will look at the individual groups of students that we've got. And if we can't do it with everybody present, then we'll try and group the students, okay, into relatively similar time zones if that's what we've got to do, okay. So it's a reasonable point, okay, and the immediate thing is pretty much okay. There is a potential for that being an issue, but we will try and group it so that everybody is basically included within the team.
That's great. Am I right in thinking, Phil, the tutorials that are delivered are recorded and stored on Blackboard?
Yes, that's actually a good point. We do actually record. We do actually record the tutorials. So the immediate thing is occasionally, okay, if anybody has Wi-Fi issues, okay, pretty much, okay, that the tutorial will be recorded so that everybody can have a look at it again afterwards. So we do that. Pretty much from my point of view, I think you know, they're not insurmountable problems. I do collaborative work basically with the US on a research project, and we have to get a time that's convenient to everybody. And so the immediate thing is we will just do exactly that. We will try and find it, and then once we've got it set up, then there's no problems. But we do that all at the beginning. So pretty much, okay, we'd have that initial conversation about when everybody can basically deal with the tutorials.
That's great, Phil. Thanks for that. Hamoud has asked another question. You may have touched on this, Phil, so apologies if you've already answered it, but is the course accredited by the RSC?
Okay, so right, okay, so this is right. Let me tell you where we are with that. Okay, so the RSC basically requires us to submit marked courseworks so that they can assess that this is being done, and we're doing that as we speak at the moment. So as we speak today, okay, the answer would be no. Okay, we are rapidly trying to basically get that into position, and I will keep everybody updated on where we are. The immediate thing is pretty much with the RSC accreditation. It's the only issue that we have is if you've done an MChem, an accredited RSC course that's MChem, then pretty much you will have completed a certain amount of practical work. And that is fundamentally what the RSC is looking for. So if you come from a different background to that, you're either not accredited, okay, or you come from a different degree, okay, then the immediate thing is pretty much, okay, there is nothing stopping you doing this course. It's just effectively that it will not come basically with RSC accreditation. As I said, at the moment, we don't have it. okay, but we are rapidly trying to get it. For what it's worth, we've just gone through an accreditation for our undergraduate programs, and they have been accredited. So it's just a question of having sufficient material to send the RSC so that they can effectively accredit the course.
That's great, thanks, Phil. Okay. So this is a question I've been asked a couple of times as well, Phil. It's again from Hamoud, but does the certificate, when you pass, does it say by distance learning on the certificate?
Okay, so I have also been asked this question, okay, and pretty much the University of Manchester does not use the mode of delivery on its certificate. So what it will say is MSc Analytical Science. That's what
Great.
it will say.
Yeah. Okay. Evan has asked us another question as well, Phil. Are assessments on a grade scale such as ABC?
Now what we use is we just use a numerical mark. So we will use a numerical mark.
Great. Okay, that's probably helpful. Evan's mentioned that employer reimbursement is based on grade of class, so maybe he's referring to fees there. Okay, so that looks to be all of the questions asked. Evan has actually said he's on the East Coast, by the way.
Excellent. Okay, that's all right. Okay, we can deal with that.
Yeah, that's helpful, isn't it? I actually received a couple of
tutorials.
Yes, so it's easier to do. I was asked a couple of questions, Phil, before your presentation today. It was from somebody who I think isn't attending today, but I'm sure they'll rewatch. And the question was, what would you expect to be included in personal statements on an application form, Phil? Is there anything you're looking out for that somebody should include?
Okay, I mean, from my point of view, okay, it's useful basically to see if you're working currently, then the immediate thing is I'm always interested to see, as well as putting your degree and your academic qualifications, it's interesting to see what you've done practically. So if you've done something on your degree, if you've done a project on your degree, okay, or basically you're working on something specifically at the moment, it's useful for us to basically be able to see that. So it's really to see what experience you've got, okay?
Yeah.
And then we know what we're dealing with, okay, pretty much when you come in, so that we can have a look and just say, okay, you know, we're targeting, or we know from this particular group of students that this is the kind of level basically, or the background that they've got, and fundamentally this is where we need to be aiming materials.
Great, thanks, Phil. And there was one other question that the potential applicants asked, and it was just around referees, Phil. I think the question was, who should people consider using as referees? Should it be academic, or should it be professional, or both?
You know, from my point of view, okay, we would treat both, you know, professional and academic qualifications in the same way. Okay, there's no real specification. If you're relatively recent from academia, then the immediate thing is that you could consider using an academic qualification. I'm more interested to getting an opinion from somebody who's in a position to judge, okay, whether you are capable basically of dealing with the material that we have. Okay, great. If that's line management or your current employer, then that's fine. Okay, I don't have any issues with that. If we get academic referees, then again, it's equally applicable.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, Phil. That's a common question I'm asked, so thanks very much for answering that one. I'll just double check the questions panel, Phil, to see if anything's come in, but it does look as if I think you've covered everything. Yeah, so thanks so much for your time. Is there anything you want to add?
Just say, Craig, before we go, okay, if anybody has any questions, then you know, we are a very approachable bunch, okay? So the immediate thing is you can, you're quite welcome to contact Craig or contact me directly, okay? And we will basically do our best to deal with any issues that you have.
That's great. Thanks so much for your time today, Phil. Really appreciate it. So hopefully the next time I'm speaking to people, and you, Phil, as well, that we're receiving application forms from everybody who hopes to join our course. But I'd just like to say thanks everybody for joining us, and we really appreciate the questions, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.